The UFC's pound for pound rankings have been a very hot topic this past year. With Islam Makhachev being ranked the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. We know Dana White does not agree with that. He believes Jon Jones is the pound for pound number one fighter in the world. We hear it any chance Dana has a chance to say it on the mic. He says it. We hear it all the time. I think we're all tired of hearing it, even though it is a true statement. Jon Jones, arguably the greatest of all time, should be ranked number one. And I think that is a shame that he is, not number one. It's created quite a bit of controversy. However, I think the UFC rankings biggest issue isn't Jon Jones's ranking, it's Pantoja's ranking. How are we going to rank one of the most dominant champions in UFC history ninth? And he just went up 2 spots. He was number 11 heading into UFC 310 after completely conquering a division. He was ranked 11th. We had 2 non-champions ranked ahead of him. In Volk, who's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. And Leon Edwards, who has lost the championship, to Bilal Muhammad. And now, Pantoja is still ranked the lowest out of all the UFC champions. And that is criminal. There are some guys who you can argue should be ranked ahead of Pantoja. I think when you think of pound for pound, you think of, it's a mythical list and it's all subjective. But if they were all the same weight, what would these guys be ranked based purely on skills? Now, I think Jon Jones and Alex Pereira, being the 2 guys who have championships in multiple divisions, are number 1 and number 2, without a doubt. After that, Islam Makhachev has 3 title defenses. Alex Pereira has 3 title defenses. And Pantoja has 3 title defenses. Those are the guys who you should be discussing, who have conquered the divisions and have done so much for the UFC and are pound for pound greats. Now, there are a couple guys who could be in that conversation as well. Merab Dvalishvili has beaten 4 former champions, and that is quite impressive. But Pantoja has 10 ranked wins. He has 10 wins over ranked opponents. With Kai Asakura being ranked number 14, he is now at 10. The next highest is Bilal Muhammad with 5. Pantoja has double the amount of ranked wins than any current UFC champion. And we rank him the weakest UFC champion? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. And it's quite the shame. Now, I think the whole thing is a mess. I do think Jon Jones, realistically, is the pound for pound best fighter in the world. I understand a lot of us don't like Jon Jones, the person. I understand that we think that Jon Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall. Many of us believe that. But I don't think we can really say that there is anyone better than Jon Jones. He is the smartest fighter we have ever seen in the UFC, probably. He hasn't lost, ever. And he's had one of the longest UFC careers. He's been around since 2012. He's had over a decade of success. There's really no one else in the UFC who has had that. So I believe that Jon Jones is number 1, Alex Pereira, number 2. Islam Makhachev realistically is number 3. And then I think for number 4, I think it realistically is Pantoja, even though the Poirier has knocked out 2 all-time greats this year. And then I think Poirier and Merab, and then Bilal. And Tom Aspinall is an interim champion. Tom Aspinall is a great fighter. I don't think anyone's really going to beat Tom Aspinall. I think Tom Aspinall is the guy to beat Jon Jones, but he's an interim champion. He's not as accomplished as a lot of these guys. He's not as accomplished as Pantoja. And I think this kind of shows how little the flyweight division is valued among a lot of people in the MMA community. We've talked about how that division has had a hard time surviving over the last several years. And that makes sense. That's why people don't value it. And it's not the most popular division in terms of what it's done for the UFC financially. Think about it, like Pantoja's first 2 title fights were co-main events. He just got main events for the first time this year at UFC 301. It didn't sell too well. UFC 310, I'm sure it did much better. That was a really strong card. And Pantoja, really got a lot of attention from this, last week now. But this division needs to be valued significantly more than it is. I mentioned in a previous video how the flyweight division is tied with the middleweight division for the most title changes since 2018, since Demetrius Johnson left. Only 2 fighters in the division's history have multiple title defenses. That is Demetrius Johnson and now Pantoja. And Pantoja, at this point, with how impressive his run has been leading up to becoming champion, and his championship run, has cleaned out the division in a way that we haven't seen since Demetrius Johnson. That's something very rare that we don't often see in the UFC, is a fighter just completely wipe out a division. And we are at a conversation now where, is Pantoja's title run more impressive than Demetrius Johnson's? And Demetrius Johnson has 11 title defenses. It's most in UFC history. And we are talking now, is Pantoja better? Chael Sonnen was saying, I am not positive that we don't have the greatest 125 pounder we've ever seen as the UFC champion. And no one's really pushed back that narrative. As great as Demetrius Johnson is, the level of competition in the UFC is much greater now than it was when DJ was champion. And that goes for all the divisions, not just flyweight. So if we're having a conversation if Pantoja is better than a guy on many people's Mount Rushmores for greatest MMA fighters of all time, why is he ranked the weakest in the pound-for-pound rankings of all the UFC champions? It makes no sense, and it is criminal. So Dana is right that these guys don't know the sport who do these rankings. Now, it's a subjective list, pound-for-pound rankings, and they're kind of stupid if we really look at the meaning behind them. And Dana says if Jon Jones is at number 1, you don't know the sport. Sure, I think that's a fair enough statement considering how great of a fighter that Jon Jones is. But if you think Pantoja's number 9, you really don't understand the sport, and you really shouldn't be doing these rankings. It is criminal. I know I've said this already. It is criminal that he is the 9th ranked fighter on the pound-for-pound rankings and the lowest ranked champion. That is the real travesty with these pound-for-pound rankings. That is absurd. And it does need to be reevaluated. Let me know what you think in the comments below.